So here we are at the end of 2012, and you know what that means? It's time for an end of the year retrospective video. Now this isn't a list of the best or worst manga of this past year, it's more a way for me to look at some of the series that debuted in 2012 so I can stay up to date.
2012 ended up being a very eventful year for manga, with a bunch of series ending and others breaking out. The biggest surprise of the year for me was the sudden surge in popularity experienced by Kuroko no Basuke, which surpassed Naruto to become the second best-selling manga of the year. A number of long-running and popular manga also concluded their runs in publication, including Negima, K-On!, Blade of the Immortal, Air Gear, and in Weekly Shonen Jump, Katekyo Hitman Reborn and Bakuman. Meanwhile, licensing company Viz Media launched the online service Shonen Jump Alpha, which is going to start releasing translated chapters on the same day they come out in Japan in just a few weeks. Of course, not all of the Weekly Shonen Jump series to debut in 2012 ended up in Alpha. Less than 1/4 of the new titles were translated, and only one of those survived into the new year. The end of both Reborn and Bakuman sort of left the door open for more series to make their mark on the magazine than last year. In 2011, 10 series debuted and 6 survived into 2012, while this year, 12 series debuted and 8 are going to make it into 2013. I should mention that among those 2011 titles, only 2 are still around, and Kurogane could very well be on its last legs. On the other hand, over the course of the past year, Nisekoi has become one of the 5 most popular series in the magazine, though it's a bit different now from when it started off, having turned into more of a harem-style romantic comedy.
But enough about that, it's history! Ancient, barely a year-old history, and I've got a dozen new manga to talk about, so let's get started!
Haikyuu has already been around for close to a year now, and it shows no signs of dropping off in popularity, presumably because of its predominantly female reader base. See, despite being a shonen magazine, Jump actually has roughly as many female readers as male readers, so being able to appeal to women can really help a series to stand out from the crowd. So how does Haikyuu accomplish this?
It's full of athletic guys getting sweaty, how do you think?
In all seriousness though, Haikyuu is actually pretty damn good. The series focuses on Hinata Shoyo, a volleyball player with a short stature and limited playing experience but incredible enthusiasm, dedication, and jumping ability. In his final year of junior high, his team is knocked out in the first round of their first and only tournament by a team headed by Kageyama Tobio, an intense, serious player who demands absolute perfection from his team. Shoyo vows he'll get his revenge on Kageyama when they're in high school, but unexpectedly they end up joining the same school. The two of course stubbornly refuse to get along at first, but gradually come to understand and appreciate each other more. It's an age-old story, but Haikyuu plays it to perfection, and it's really satisfying to see the two grow closer because of how well we get to know them in the beginning of the manga. They have dreams and fears and distinct motivations for wanting to play volleyball, and it's easy to connect with those desires and insecurities. The manga does a great job of portraying how they forge a bond of trust, possibly better than any sports manga I've read in the past, even Kuroko, which is entirely based on a symbiotic relationship. All in all, it just works, and if you tend to like sports manga, you probably can't go wrong checking this one out.
So, while I was doing research for this particular video, I did a Google search for Pajama Nakanojo, and the very first time I looked it up, one of the very first images that I saw was this. With safe search on. And for some reason now I can't stop thinking of peaches.
The series follows Keisuke as well as his childhood friend slash sort of surrogate sister slash creepily semi-incestuous love interest, Makura. One night Makura disappears, and when Keisuke finds her, for some reason her spirit has been separated from her body, and only Keisuke can see her. For all intents and purposes, Makura is basically a ghost, except for the fact she's not dead, her body's just sleeping. Pajama Nakanojo is a very confused series, being part fairy tale, part high school romance, part fan service heavy harem series, and part holy shit, this one girl almost gets raped and Keisuke gets stabbed in the heart! I honestly don't know what the hell the mangaka was going for with this series, especially since 2/3 of the way in, Makura suddenly wakes up and she returns to life as normal for the last 10 chapters. Why would you have that happen? I mean, the series is called Pajama Nakanojo because while she's a ghost, Makura can only wear the pajamas she was wearing at the time of the incident, and then the title becomes a misnomer because, big surprise, she doesn't go around wearing pajamas when she doesn't have to anymore. I don't get it. I mean, the series got about 10 more chapters to wrap up after that point, so I don't think it had been cancelled yet when this happened, especially since everything after that point is just typical high school setting crap. There's nothing really exciting going on. Like I said, it's a very confused series and it doesn't seem all that well put together. It's full of weird mood swings and poorly defined characters, and oh yeah, the main romantic tension is between a couple who are repeatedly described as being like brother and sister. I strongly recommend giving this one a pass. So yeah, here's another romantic comedy. Stop me if you've heard this one before. The incredibly shy Shota has a chance encounter with a beautiful girl named Sana, and he becomes smitten with her at first sight. The two become fast friends, and it's not until later that Shota discovers that Sana is actually an actress who will be starring in a high school drama named Koisomi Momiji. Sana is supposed to portray a young girl in love, but she has no romantic experience to draw on, so...
Everyone say it with me now. She asks him to pretend to be her boyfriend.
Yeah, we've all seen this one done before. Girl is ignorant of guy's feelings, asks guy to pretend to be in love with her, and ends up falling in love herself. To double up on the cliche, it turns out that one of Sana's co-stars, the Grab Your Idol Nana, knew Shota when they were kids, and she enters into the situation to make it a love triangle both in pretend and in reality.
This is a manga that's absolutely riddled with cliches, and I think you'll be half expecting every dramatic turn that the series throws at you.
There are a few enjoyable bits to Koisomi Momiji, but the cookie-cutter quality of the rest of the manga just ruins them. One big example of this is with Nana, who has a few nice qualities to her character. There's something about how her expressions are drawn that I really like, and she gets most of the funnier jokes throughout the series. But they tend to get overshadowed by jokes about her giant boobs, and in general her character development takes a backseat to her role as the series' biggest source of fan service. That trend of good qualities being covered up by bland ones happens with the whole manga in general. It features a few nice character moments and some genuinely funny jokes scattered amidst a sea of predictable bland junk. Overall, Koisomi Momiji is just another forgettable shonen romance, but there is a good manga buried somewhere in here, waiting to be excavated from a mountain of generic crap. And I do hope to one day read that hypothetically good manga.
Everyone's got that fantasy about what their life would be like if they had superpowers, but I don't imagine a lot of people think it would make their lives more boring.
Saiki Kusuo is a teenager with psychic powers, and he's not happy about it. As he explains to Nobri in particular, having extraordinary powers like telepathy and prestidigitation means he never has to make an effort to succeed, and he's never surprised by anything. Thus, he never experiences a sense of accomplishment or the thrill of the unexpected. So instead, Saiki just wants to get through life without encountering any troubles. Everything in the series is played for laughs, and most of the humor comes from some other character doing something weird to irritate Saiki, and him making a remark on it, all while his facial expression doesn't change, not even opening his mouth to speak. It's almost like reading Garfield, if Garfield lived in an insane asylum and also he was a god. The series is entirely joke-based, so I can't really recommend it one way or the other. If you find it funny, you find it funny, and I didn't really. I didn't dislike the series, but it didn't make me laugh very much, so I can't say much in its favor.
Why did this happen?
I'll make this short because I spent an entire other video talking about this series already. Go watch it! But I swear, Barrage was such an enjoyable series that I still resent the fact that it didn't catch on and was cancelled after barely 4 months. It had great characters, an interesting setting, plus some cool artwork, especially during action scenes, and I was hoping that this would be the next breakout battle manga in Jump, and I cannot begin to tell you how upset I am that we won't be getting any more of it.
It's interesting whenever a mangaka tries to follow up on a hit series with a new project. Some series are like Bakuman and end up just as much a success the first hit, while some are like Gunblaze West and don't.
Matsui Yusei is best known as the creator of the supernatural mystery series Majin Tante no Gami Neru, and his new project, Assassination Classroom, has so far made a big and immediate splash. The story follows an absurdly powerful being who vows to destroy the Earth in 1 year's time. All of Earth's military forces prove futile in the wake of his power, but the creature makes the bizarre request to become the teacher of a junior high class. What unfolds is a strange crossover of genres wherein the creature tries to become a positive influence in the lives of his troubled students, while also constantly evading their attempts to assassinate him. Over time, they grow kind of attached to him, even giving him the name Koro-sensei as a play on words on how difficult he is to kill. That's not to say the students ever give up on trying to kill Koro-sensei though, and it's really interesting to see the series hit so many different notes and always come back to that point. Sometimes the series is heartwarming, sometimes it's a little scary, and sometimes it's flat out goofy, but it's been strong all the way through so far. Between the unique premise and Matsui's previous success, Assassination Classroom is getting a lot of early attention and acclaim, and certainly deserves it.
This one's pretty bad.
Takamagahara was a short-lived battle manga that followed a teenager named Yamada Yamato who discovers that he possesses a special power known as a Kamizawa. Supposedly everyone in the world possesses one of these dormant abilities, with some being more useful than others. Yamato's power is ill-defined up until the very end of the series, but basically it enhances his physical strength and stamina. I've seen the idea of everyone in the world having a special power done before, but it is still a good setup for a series since it gives you a lot of freedom in how you go about designing characters and fight scenes. And while Yamato is kind of boring in this regard, there are some far more interestingly designed characters in the series. For example, one of Yamato's allies has the power to turn animals into guns!
The series certainly didn't suffer from a lack of ideas, it was just ruined by absolutely horrible pacing.
Here's how the first few chapters of the series play out. In Chapter 1, Yamato goes about a normal day until he's attacked by the leader of a gang. Yamato's powers awaken at just that moment, and so he defeats the guy. Chapter 2, Yamato and the gang leader become friends, then said gang leader is attacked by a weirdo with super blade powers, and Yamato runs to his aid at the end of the chapter. Chapter 3, Yamato beats up the blade guy. Chapter 4, a new character shows up, explains everything that's going on, and tells Yamato that they should join forces. Now, normally in a battle manga, the fight in chapters 2 and 3 would take place in the second half of chapter 1, and the explanation in chapter 4 would then follow. That way you give your readers a taste of what they can expect from the rest of the series very early on, instead of making them feel like you're wasting their time. I'm not saying you have to follow that standard as a rule, but I am saying that the first few chapters of this series feel like a waste of time. The last 2 chapters suddenly switch gears by introducing an entire new group of villains, revealing that the one female character in the series has an apparently really important Kamizawa, and in general seem like they should have been labeled "things I was planning to do later." I have to think that part of the reason Takamagahara didn't catch on is because of its slow start, and obviously the mangaka had a lot of plans in mind that he never got to implement the way he wanted to, so why does the series take so long to get going? Because Yamato mucks around trying to draw manga. Yeah, a whole bunch of time is spent establishing that Yamato wants to be a manga artist, except that it's treated as a joke because he's really horrendously bad at drawing manga. So, I guess what I'm saying is, one of the reasons that this manga isn't good is that a whole bunch of time is dedicated to establishing that the main character is completely incapable of creating a good manga. Okay, I know that's not irony, but I feel like it should be.
It's a gag manga.
This is the one series I couldn't find in English, which really doesn't surprise me. With few exceptions, most gag manga don't make it across the language and cultural barriers all that easily, so it tends to be more trouble than it's worth to translate them. For the record, Date Senpai is about a guy who manages to ask his crush out on a date, only to be confronted by her older brother who is obsessed with mimicking the historical Date Masamune. I wish I could say more, but judging the series without being able to read it would be greatly unfair of me. I only included it in this video at all for the sake of completion, and I don't know, I guess if you think jokes about early 17th century warlords are hilarious and you can read Japanese, it might be worth checking out. Considering it's the most recent of 3 different sports manga running in Jump, it makes sense that Cross-Manage would have to be a little different in order to distinguish itself from Haikyuu and Kuroko no Basuke. And, well, it is. First of all, it focuses on an all-girls team, and the protagonist for once isn't a player, but instead their manager, Sakurai.
Also, it's about lacrosse, so I don't think it's retreading anything in that respect.
There's less focus in the manga on the sport itself, and a lot more on developing the relationships between the main characters. Sakurai is sort of a recovering introvert who used to have a lot of passion for sports, and then lost it up until he met Toyoguchi. Toyoguchi is clumsy and awkward and kind of an idiot, but she loves playing and works incredibly hard to get better, and some of that enthusiasm eventually rubs off on Sakurai. It's simple, but well put together and effective character building, and over the past few months of reading the manga I have gotten invested in it. I hesitate to call this a good manga though, because it seems that the great focus that Sakurai and Toyoguchi have gotten has come at the expense of the rest of the cast. There are a dozen players on the lacrosse team, and other than Toyoguchi I can only name like 3 of them off the top of my head. There are a couple moments here and there in which one of the less important characters gets to do something, but overall they don't seem all that memorable. Still, I'm getting to enjoy reading cross-manage. Each week it seems to get consistently a little better, the art gets a little crisper, the jokes get a little funnier, and I care a little more about the characters. It's still a young series, and I hope it sticks around for at least a little while.
I'll admit it, the only reason I like this manga is because of the gimmick.
Hungry Joker is a battle manga about a teenage genius named Haiji who one day finds a bizarre-looking apple at the site of an apparent murder scene. After conducting some studies, Haiji hypothesizes that the apple is actually a relic of power that has survived through the ages, and that this is the same apple that Isaac Newton based his theory of universal gravitation on. Eventually, Haiji concludes that Newton actually gained this knowledge of the universe by consuming the apple's juice, and when Haiji takes a bite out of the thing, he gains the ability to temporarily control gravity. It's not long before Haiji discovers that there are other such relics, like Howard Mendel's peas and Pythagoras' hammer.
Isn't that great? I mean, yeah, it kind of chalks up every insight humanity's ever had about the universe to scientists have superpowers, but it's just so cool.
I think some people might find Haiji's assistant Toriyuji a little annoying. She's a very timid, clumsy moe blob, and her main role in the story so far has been to accidentally stumble into things to force the plot to progress. But she does work pretty well as a foil to Haiji. There's been an early chapter where Haiji has to talk her into staying at his side as he goes off on this dangerous adventure, which he wants to go on because he's a scientist. His argument for how important Toriyuji is basically amounts to you're clumsy and stupid, but good things happen while you're around, and yet somehow I still bought into it. This series has piqued my curiosity. Its action scenes have been effective so far, and Haiji seems like a fun protagonist. And of course, like I said, I really like the science-y theme. Hungry Joker has started off at an incredibly fast pace, so it'll be interesting to see whether or not it catches on.
On the other hand, I'm already sick of this one.
Kiruko is a former mercenary who apparently possesses enough power to take on a small army, and she's recently retired from the military and come to a small rural town to become a policewoman. She's partnered up with Haruki, a lazy, good-for-nothing officer who only agreed to take Kiruko under his wing because he heard she had big breasts. So it's kind of like the first half of Hot Fuzz if Nicholas Angel were a hot chick and Danny wanted to fuck her.
And now I'm going to find out this fanfiction exists, aren't I?
The series unfolds in about the way you would expect it to. Kiruko can't control her own strength and ends up wrecking the town in order to catch a panty thief, and she often causes destruction because she's eager to prevent crimes that aren't actually being committed. Since Hiroki agreed to take responsibility for her, he takes all the blame for everything, but that's okay because he's an asshole. I don't think this manga is funny, at all. In fact, I found it to be pretty annoying at points. I think part of the problem is that it tries so hard to make Kiruko seem funny and cute, and instead she ends up being neither. I mean, if you like the series, great, good for you, but the characters, the setup, every single joke, nothing works for me. I won't say it's a bad manga because there's nothing bad about it, it's just a collection of jokes that don't hit the mark, and I'm not gonna miss it if it goes away soon. Yukihira Soma is a young chef who dreams of one day surpassing his father, who owns the restaurant that Soma works at. One day, Soma's father leaves to work outside the country, and he enters Soma into a prestigious cooking school with an incredibly low graduation rate. In order to achieve his dream of surpassing his father, first Soma has to overcome his incredibly competitive classmates. Not surprisingly for a cooking manga, all of the food in Shokugeki no Soma seems delicious enough to die for. Not only does the food itself get drawn with a tremendous amount of detail whilst being cooked and then served, but the people who eat it— HOLY SHIT!
Who stuck a porno in the middle of this manga?
This happens in like every eating scene. Apparently the food in this manga is literally orgasmically good. As it turns out, the manga's artist Seiki Shun is better known as Tosh, a hentai doujinshi artist, which shouldn't be all that surprising to you after reading the manga itself. And if I'm being perfectly honest, I fucking love Shokugeki no Soma. This manga is so ridiculous and shameless and plays itself so straight that it is awesome. I am a happier person for having read this manga, and I am so glad that I did. Is it going to stick around? I don't know, and I don't care. I'm happy enough with what I've already read.
And those are all the new manga that debuted in 2012 in Weekly Shonen Jump. Here's hoping that 2013 turns out to be just as good a year for manga. But for the present, I'm my ruler of time, wishing you a happy new year, and that you forget what they taught you in school, always read right to left.